Kia ora everybody, welcome to today's training. Really excited to have you here and excited to be sharing with you over the next 30 odd minutes or so a 5-part framework that guarantees you more buy-in, more funding and more support for sustainability, something I'm sure we could all do with, especially in this day and age. Strategic influence for sustainability is something we developed about 3 years ago and have run successfully with a few of our corporate partners here in New Zealand. And before I get into any of the content, however, I just want to make sure that you're in the right room. So this is for you if you work in an organization that has made a commitment to sustainability, but is not moving as fast as it could be. Or if you're working for an organization that was on the right track, but has maybe pulled back from sustainability due to COVID, or maybe even laid off part of your team, hopefully not yourself. Or this is also for you if you were one of those quote unquote tick box sustainability professionals in the first place. What I mean by that is people who are tasked with implementing sustainability, but are from the onset not given the money, the funding, the resources, the support, or even the decision-making powers that are required to do so. And if that is you, I really do feel for you. You are our absolute heroes here, so there's no shame in that at all. This is especially for you if you are tired of working so hard to get people on board with sustainability and you're still feeling that you're not really getting through to them. If you're frustrated with constantly having to compromise, and trust me, I've been there myself, and you don't see your objectives realized and you have to accept that change is slow. Maybe you're also one of the people who feel so passionate about their work that the constant roadblocks are actually starting to wear you down on a personal level as well. And perhaps you even find yourself contemplating whether you're in the right job, whether there is not another way where you can have more impact, another thing you could possibly do to change more of the world faster. So if this is you, today will be perfect because it will be opening up a whole new perspective and hopefully give you back some of that positivity that may have gone missing along the way. And trust me, I can feel you. I was in exactly the same space, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. So by the end of today, you will know about the foundations of strategic influence, what we mean by that, and how it can help you create or deepen the buy-in for sustainability in your organization. This is all about changing hearts and minds. This is about deep buy-in, deep support that is integrated and deeply embedded in all of the organization. I'll also be sharing with you 3 secrets that will help you apply these foundations successfully. And I'll also tell you a little bit about what might go wrong along the way so that you can avoid some of those pitfalls. This will help you to implement change more quickly and more effectively. It will also help you create a compelling vision that can change hearts and minds, which is really important. It'll help you be more creative and versatile in your approach to influence. It'll help you lead instead of push or manage. And you will also find it increases your credibility, your authority, the support you get, and the resources that are allocated. And last not least, it will help ensure that you get a spot at the tables that matter. You are part of the decisions that matter. If you stick around till the end of the session today, we'd love to offer you a free gift, a personalized free audit of your situation to help you discover where you may be missing opportunities for change and how you can apply what we're learning today. I don't want this to be a generic, it is a generic framework, but I don't want it to be a generic session for you. So what we're going to do is, if you stick around to the end, you'll get an invite code and you can set up a session with me or one of my team where we will look at how we apply this exact framework to your situation. So stick around till the end. Make sure you get that code. So the harsh truth, unfortunately, is that sustainability has come a really long way, but it is nowhere near where it needs to be. In just about every organization, there are still deniers, and unfortunately, they are often in the positions that have all the power, essentially. Money still dominates the conversation at the top tables more times than not. And we have long known, if we're really honest, we have long known what we need to do. The Kyoto Protocol was adopted in 1997. So it's not like we didn't know what we had to do. And if you're got your thumb on the pulse of the time, you will also know that we're running out of time, that the converging crises are only accelerating. Meanwhile, the best people are burning out, best people like yourself, more and more. And I work with a lot of people who are finding it quite disheartening over time as they're working on these things. Now, if you're finding yourself in that situation of overwhelm, of not seeing change fast enough, let me reassure you it is not at all uncommon, and it is not atypical, and it's also not your fault. A recent report from Oxygen Consulting here in New Zealand, surveying sustainability professionals here in New Zealand, sure, very similar overseas, really highlighted the tremendous amount of different skill sets that are required to succeed in a sustainability role. And it also highlighted the diverse backgrounds with which people come to these roles. And most importantly, though, it showed, and you can see that here, how much emphasis there is on influence in sustainability. Most people reported they spend twice as much time influencing than they are spending implementing. And the problem with all of that is that what it boils down to is that the real job, your real job, is to sell sustainability, even though that's a word none of us really love, but it's the truth. The real job is selling sustainability, and nobody trained you to do that. But now there are some good news as well. Strategic influence, and I'm a firm believer in this, I've seen it happen, when applied correctly, is extremely powerful. It's a set of skills which is actually easy to learn and has a lot of added benefits, which I'll be getting into today as well. And change, this is really important, change can happen in an instant. I'll say that again, change can happen in an instant. And I think this is important to really hear, because we've gotten so used to thinking that everything takes a long time. When I say change can happen in an instant, what I mean is that the shift that can happen in an individual to go from making decision A to making decision B happens in a heartbeat. Implementation may take a little bit longer, but as you know, if we are really convinced of something, if we're really passionate about something, we can make things happen incredibly quickly. So what do I mean by influence? A lot of people start thinking about, oh, this is all manipulation, and they're not really comfortable. Influence, the way we define it, is the ability to lead people to persuade themselves. The ability to lead people to persuade themselves. This is not telling them what to do, forcing them, somehow pushing them. This is not what it's about. And the reason why that it's not about that is because we know that if we push someone to do something they don't really want to do, they're not going to follow through, or they're going to do that famous, yes, I'll take care of that, and then nothing happens. They just kind of stall, or they create roadblocks, or things are not progressing. So it's really important to understand that influence is about people persuading themselves, people genuinely believing a new thing, people genuinely standing behind a new decision they make. So what does this look like? The foundations of strategic influence, as we define them, have 5 key pillars. And I'll go through them one by one, so that you can get an overview and you get a really good understanding of how this all works. Pillar number 1 is strategy, hence strategic influence. The strategic part is all about getting a really clear understanding of who, what, and how. Who we need to influence, what we need them to do, and how we're going to go about getting them to do that. So that's the strategic bit, and I'll come back to that with more detail in a minute. I'll just want to give you the overview for now. Pillar number 2 is persona or charisma. Pillar number 2 is all about how you show up delivering your message. And you've all made the experience, I'm sure, that those really charismatic people who they enter the room and it feels like, you know, the lights come on, have an incredible power to influence. So the persona or charisma bit is building your ability to show up as a magnetic, charismatic leader, which will make your job of influencing just also much easier. Again, I'll get into more detail in a moment. Pillar number 3 are the tools and skills. This is like your toolkit. And this is where we are working on just adding more ways into your toolbox for you to create, to have more influence. You all already have a particular set of tools you are using now to influence. And those are tools that you've been using for a long time, that you are very familiar with, and that have gotten you to the point where you are now. So the important thing here is to understand that where you are now is a result of the tools you've been using up until now. By expanding your toolkit, that's how you can go further and how you can accelerate things. Pillar number 4 is application. Application is the bit where we actually practice. This is the bit where we actually have to do things and try them out and get better at what we're doing. And then the 5th pillar, and I'll talk more about that in a moment as well, is to test and to revise. And I'll come back to that in more detail in a moment. Before I go and dive into the detail, though, I want to tell you a little bit more about how we came up with this and what the backstory of this is. Now, I've worked in sustainability over 25 years of my career. I started in environmental law, and then I went into corporate strategy. I went into corporate sustainability, social responsibility. I went into policy and worked at all the different levels. I did a lot of work in the community level. I did a lot of work in local government. But what I found across the board, I was constantly driven to create change at a large scale because I was feeling the urgency and I had the passion for what I was doing, and maybe you can relate. But what I found across the board, law was slow to change, corporate was slow to change, local government was slow to change. The fastest change actually happened at the household level, at the smallest possible unit, but then you don't have that scale sort of impact. So overall, wherever I went, things weren't happening as quickly or as comprehensively as I knew they needed to happen. So I came to the point of burnout, and I actually came to the point where I was just about to throw in the towel and just focus on gardening and looking after my piece of land here in Upper Hutt in New Zealand. I've got a couple of acres, and focus on growing food, really. So I ended up deciding to change careers, and I became a coach. I trained as a coach, and I did a lot of work around personal development and attended seminars, etc., etc. And one of the things the first thing I had to work through was my own burnout and my own frustration and my own despair for what was happening in the world. But then there was a turnaround point. I went to a seminar with 4,500 people, and it was a personal development seminar. They were high achievers, and I was looking around the room, and I thought to myself, what is it that allows all these leaders in business, in organizations, to create this amazing level of success so quickly? What is it that we are not doing? And the second question I ask myself is, how can I apply all these things I'm learning about human motivation, about behavior, about psychology, about why we do what we do? How can I take all of this and apply it to sustainability? The result of this process is Influence for Impact, the framework I'm talking about here. And I just wanted to share that backstory with you because I want you to understand that if you're in this place where you're feeling that frustration, I can very much relate, and I really do hear you. So let me dive into some more of the detail of these 5 pillars of strategic influence. Number 1, strategic influence, the first element, the strategy element, is based on the assumption or the presumption that everything that happens is the result of a decision. Someone is deciding something somewhere, someone is deciding to take action or not take action, to sign off the document or not sign off the document, or to vote in favor or vote against. Every single thing that happens is the result of someone's decision or action, sometimes from a group of people. So the strategic bit focuses, really hones in on these people, and we're figuring out who needs to act or decide or agree to what exactly, getting really specific. The second question is, what do they currently believe? What is their current position based on? And what do they need to decide instead? And then following on from there, what do they need to decide instead? What is the new thing that they need to believe in order to make this shift? Every decision we make is based on a set of beliefs, on a view of the world, on a perspective that we hold. And until that perspective or the view of the world or that belief changes, we are very unlikely to change our decision. And the last question is, how do you need to feel in order to believe this new thing? So that's the strategic bit, and that's where we can go and we can really get crystal clear about who these people are and who are the decision makers in the organization. They may not be who you think they are. They may not be the people who are necessarily in the leadership positions. They may be the people who are just the social influencers, who are shaping the opinion. Maybe it's to do with stakeholders. But getting really clear on where that current influence comes from allows us to start changing that game. The second pillar, again, being about persona and charisma. And this bit is all about magnetism. It's all about showing up as a person that people want to listen to, people want to believe, people want to follow. And if you know a little bit about sales, you know that sales is all about creating know, like, and trust, getting people to get to know you, making sure that they like you, and building trust with them. We're breaking it down further into the 8 C's, we call them, which is the C for care, really caring about what you do, conditioning yourself to show up in that way every single time, generating certainty. In a room full of people, the person with the highest degree of certainty usually sets the tone, usually leads the decision. Being contagious, being the sort of personality that people feel drawn to. Consistency, coming up with a consistent and clear, is the other C, clear message that can be repeated and can really influence. Generating calm, and then generating the courage we need to sometimes to step out of our comfort zone. Another really important element of persona and charisma is to eliminate judgment. We resonate what we're feeling inside. And if we're coming into a conversation with a mindset of like, oh, why doesn't he get this? I've been talking about this for years, they're still not listening. Those are all the sort of vibes that people pick up and that make them more defensive. So you can't influence anyone while you're judging them. So getting to the bottom of that, eliminating that so that you can be more effective in influencing. Pillar number 3 is around the tools and the skills. And this is all about expansion and creating more diversity. As I said earlier, you already have your tools of influence that you're frequently using. But a lot of us are using only one or two, and we use them over and over and over again. It's that same lever we pull, which is our favorite approach to influence. For a lot of us, that's having conversations, having debates, writing reports, doing presentations, those sorts of ways. But really, they are only one snippet of many, many ways in which you can influence people. Behavior change has 3 dimensions. Influence has 6 different dimensions, and human motivation has even more. So the goal here is to expand that, those skills, to basically give you a whole lot more tools to play with, so that you are better able to address different scenarios, really. Pillar number 4 is application. And this one is all about perfect practice making perfect. We like to think that practice makes perfect, but it's perfect practice that makes perfect. If you're running through something in a mediocre way 100 times, you're still going to get a mediocre result. So you want to be making sure that as you practice your new tools, you are doing so in a way that is actually, maybe not 100% perfect, but is aligned and authentic and working really well. This is also about getting you out of your comfort zone, so that when you go from, pulling that one lever that you're really comfortable pulling, and diversifying into all these new tools, that you can start feeling comfortable doing that. It's a bit like, think back when you were learning to drive a car and you're driving along and you have to remember, to turn the turning signal and remember to turn on the lights and do all those sorts of things. Whereas after a while, now you're driving along and you're probably listening to the radio and having a conversation and the kids are in the background. You're dealing with all these things, but the driving itself is automatic. So that's what we're trying to get to. We also want to condition it so that it happens automatically, so you don't need to think about it anymore. So that's the application. And the metaphor we like to use is you become like a virtuoso. You've learned your scales on the piano, but now you're off and you can play the entire symphony, I guess. I'm not that musically versed. And the last step, this to test and revise. Now, the only goal here is to fail. Failing means that we can find out more quickly what the barriers to the decision are, what the barriers to agreement are. If we advance failure and fail forward and fail faster, then we can find out so much more quickly what it really is that's getting in people's ways. And the interesting thing about this is that oftentimes, if we're only pulling our same lever, doing the same thing over and over again, we get the same responses. What should happen at this point is that, okay, we've logged the response, we figure out our reply to that, and now we're using a new tool, so we get a new response, so we go deeper, we go into that next layer of resistance, so we can start eliminating that as well. So we're peeling away the layers of the onion so that we can get to the real bottom of people's resistance. In sales, they call it objections. And once you know a no is never a no, and no is just another step closer to the yes. So as we work through these objections that get in the way of getting what we want, the quicker we can do that, the sooner we're going to see a change. Now, what are 3 secrets that help make this work better? Because this is not, this is as a framework. This is not a guaranteed process. This is just that. It's a framework. It's all about how we apply that and what we do with it, and how we go about it that makes the difference. Number 1, and this alone, if you get this, and if you walk away from this training with a real really embodying this next secret, you will already see a change in what you can achieve. So the first secret is to reframe your challenges in terms of influence. If you are currently thinking about how can we reduce the carbon emissions of this organization by another 5%, 10%, 50%, 90%, whatever it is that we need, you are not framing it in terms of influence. You're framing it in terms of a technical problem. And you need to do that, of course, because you are the expert. You need to come up with a solution. You need to come up with the answer for that. But once you have, the next step is to frame it in terms of influence, coming back to those strategic questions of who needs to actually make this decision, what do they need to buy into, and what do we need to do to get them to do that. And if you start thinking of it in those terms, taking into account as well the emotional journey that people need to be on, and this is a really interesting and tricky part, to even be able to present your solution in ways that not make people feel defensive. As soon as people start feeling defensive, they are protecting their status, and they're going to be much, much less likely to agree with what you're asking them to do. So reframing your problem or your challenge in terms of influence, getting really clear on that, is going to be a game changer just by itself. The second secret is you can't influence anyone until you influence yourself. And this may be a little bit hard to hear, but it is certainly true that if you are holding onto some of those negative emotions, some of what happened in the past, it's going to make it a lot harder for you to influence, to really get a different result this time around. Now, there's many, many other things, of course, in who you are that can get in the way. Maybe you are, uncomfortable doing certain things, uncomfortable presenting things in a certain way, avoiding confrontation. Sometimes, influence is not all about, not in every instance, is not all about, being friends with everybody. Sometimes you need to be assertive. Sometimes you need to, of course, stand up for what you have to say in the right situation, using the right tools. But for some people, that's a little bit uncomfortable. Some people, are struggling with the old imposter syndrome, whether, who am I to lead this? All these sorts of things that can get in the way, that you need to get out of the way before you can apply all of this successfully. And the third secret is also really important, is to start before you're ready. If you're sitting here thinking, yeah, well, I've still got the strategy to write, or we're still working on our 2050 goals, or we're still working on this, you are just delaying the beginning, really, of influence. Influence starts right now. Even if you don't know yet what it actually is that you're heading towards, laying the foundations to, further down the track, effectively influence, the time is now. It's really important. That's the favorite saying that goes, the best time to plant a tree was 25 years ago. The second best time is now. That really is what's happening here, what applies here. So what could possibly go wrong with all of this? I said at the beginning I was going to talk to you a little bit about the pitfalls of all the different pillars, so that you can prepare yourself and navigate those a little bit better. Pillar number one, the strategy bit. The biggest challenge people experience here commonly is to decide. And it feels really, and I admit it feels really odd, because we are so passionate, we are so aware of all the different things that are happening in the world. It can be really, really difficult to focus in on just deciding that one thing that is the thing that we're working on right now. And so setting priorities, and also deciding figuring out who is this, who is the person that I need to focus on, or the group of people sometimes. Step number two, the persona and charisma bit, really the biggest challenges we're seeing is really around that frustration, getting that out of the way, forgetting about anything that's happened before, and building that, retraining our brain. Is another thing that often goes wrong, is that because we're working in this area where there's so many challenges, we like to focus on the problem. And as human beings, we like to focus on the problem. But retraining ourselves to instead of focusing on that, to focus on creating a compelling vision, something that people can easily buy into on an emotional level. That takes a little bit of practice. Another aspect here is self-care. We really need to approach this holistically. And you would be surprised once we start working on this, how many areas are really maybe affected when it comes to your leadership. And I often have people come up to me and say, Natalie, why are we talking about my exercise regime, for example? And the answer is simple. The answer is, if you are not showing up as the person that other people aspire to be, it makes it harder for you to influence, to be charismatic, to get that sort of buy-in. So, and it's actually one of the easiest things we can fix, getting you to feel good about yourself. Last not least, some of the stuff can be hard to release, so it's good to be given the right tools to be supported in this process. Step number 3, tools and skills. What can go wrong here? Because of there being so many different ways in which we can go around about influencing, it can get a little bit overwhelming, and it can be hard to choose. So now you may be in a position where you're not necessarily even aware that, what you're choosing from. Then you'll find yourself in a position of going, okay, there's all these different things that I could be doing right now. Where should I start? Which one should I focus on? Pitfalls of step number 4, the application. This is almost my favorite one, because what it really is, the biggest pitfall is not doing it. The biggest pitfall is not practicing, not preparing. We always like to say, showing up unprepared is preparing to fail. So this is the bit about accountability, where you've got to go, okay, I'm preparing for this meeting, I'm doing my map, I'm doing my my preparation, I'm doing my practice, so that I can deliver in the right way in the situation. And pitfall of the last step of testing and revising is simply to get disheartened and to lose that belief, to lose that, it's like that salesperson that knocks on 150 doors, and on the 151st door that you're knocking on, you still need to be just as enthusiastic about the product. You still need to be just as accommodating to your potential customer. You need to be as cheery, as friendly as you were with door number 1. So that is the bit where it's important to have the support to keep going. Because at the end of this process is a yes. It's really important to remember that. We don't know how long it takes, but at the end of this process is a yes. There is no doubt about this. So how can we help you going through this process and laying these foundations? As I mentioned earlier, for me and my team, it's taken us a number of years to figure out how to best put this together, what to draw on, what disciplines to draw on. And obviously, the world we live in, we need solutions fast. So instead of sending you off and saying, go and find all this information, educate yourself, read the books, get the tools, build the skills, do all these things, we've done it for you. We've put it together for you. We've drawn out the best way to implement. We've drawn out the factors that are the most important. And that's really what Influence for Impact is. It's a combined training, coaching, and strategy product. And to my knowledge. It's the only one out there. There's nothing like it, where you're getting training in the elements that are the most important, building your skill set, at the same time having that individual deep coaching support, helping you become that persona, and also the strategic support of mapping out what it is that needs to happen, mapping out who's involved, how to approach them, and all those sorts of things. So you'll learn the tools, you put them in a strategic context, and you get the chance to work on yourself. What's included in the program? You get 12 training sessions with our team, broken down into weekly sessions, and you keep lifetime access to all the training videos. So that's your personal library, your reference. You can always come back. You keep all the additional reading material, of course, all the workbooks, etc., etc. You also get those 6 individual coaching sessions where we walk alongside you over the period of the 3 months to make sure that you are supported through this process. And what we're also doing is more than that, is to make sure that you take this process and it becomes replicable. So after going through this once, you know how to do it again and again and again and again. You also get access to a peer support in a facilitated environment. So you're not doing this alone, you're doing it with other sustainability leaders who are in the same situation as you are. You get the workbooks, of course, the worksheets, etc., etc., and a 90-minute strategy session to kick it off, where we really go deeply into what are your areas of focus, what do they need to be at this point in time, and where we map out your influence strategy. Bonus, you also get a purpose session with Tim. Tim joined us recently. Tim brings a very, very long and rigorous sales background, so just another perspective on this whole thing, but he's also really passionate about purpose. And personally, I believe that you are your most powerful, you show up most powerfully if what you do is aligned with your purpose. So he's going to work with you on that to get really clear on that, so that that can come through in how you show up as well. Total investment for the entire program is $4,000. And if you sign up today, we will give you a bonus as well. How does this all work? How is this going to come together? What does it look like? Very simple. Click the button below this video and you can go to our secure payment page. You can make a payment, or click the email button and we will send you a personalized professional development proposal for sign-off from your HR department or your manager. So if you can get this funded through your organization, here's the proposal that you need to get sign-off, and then it can go through the process. Once we receive the payment, you get immediate access to our members area, so you can start meeting everyone. And you will also get access to some pre-reading, to further information about the course, and like I say, meet everyone else. The training begins on the 15th of September, and you can attend the weekly training sessions either live or you can watch the recording later on. What you do need to show up for live, of course, is your individual coaching sessions, but you schedule those with your coach based on what's most convenient for you. So the trainings, you can watch the recording, your individual sessions, you agree with your coach, and we will also be holding some group coaching session, which you can join along with everyone else, and they will also be at fixed times, of course. Now, I talked about the free gift at the beginning, and if you're still here, now is the time to claim it. If you are not sure if this is the sort of support you want, whether this is helpful for you, whether it even speaks to what your situation is at the moment, totally understand, and would love to offer you a strategy call where we can get together, we can figure out where you're at, whether this is the right thing for you, whether one of our other programs might be more helpful for where you're at, whether it's better to just work with one of us one-on-one, all these different possibilities. So If you'd like to book the free strategy call, use the email button below, but please use in the subject line, write the word free gift, and we will send you a calendar booking link for that. So code word is free gift, and we will be booking you in for that. Now, I hope you got lots of value out of today. Try to keep it short, could be going on about this for hours and hours and hours, but you're just getting the overview here in just over 40 minutes. Let me know what you think. I'll put my email is below the video. Hit the email button, send us your feedback, and we love to hear from you. Talk soon.